Hello. Today we're going to continue in our Strictly Strings Book 1. This is for our 6th grade class, and now we're proceeding with page 21, the D major scale. And if you notice on line number 1, the D major scale has two sharps. It is the F sharp and the C sharp. And at the top they explain that a key signature is what each instrument would be referring to. The treble clef is for violins, the alto clef for viola, and the bass clef for both the cellos and for the basses. And on this page, we're also working with a tie, and as it symbolizes on the top of the page, a tie is when the same note is connected in the same bow stroke. You're just adding the two beats of that note together in one smooth bow stroke. It's a little different than a slur, which is also notated at the top. And that is when different notes are connected in the same bowing. You're changing the fingerings, but you're not changing the actual bow. The bow is designated with either a curved line underneath two notes that are lower in the staff, or if they're higher in the staff, the curve is going to be on the top of the notes. So let's begin with our D major scale number 1. 1, 2, ready, begin. Okay, and in all major scales, the half steps, meaning fingers that are close together, are going to be in steps 3 and 4 and 7 and 8. So if you're wondering, what does that mean? If you count up from D, D is the first note, right? And then E is your second note in the scale we're referring to at the moment. F sharp to G is going to be a half a step. So those two fingers are close together. Then we have A, B, C sharp to D. That again is a half a step, so that's the 7th and 8th step. The easiest way to help yourself figure out where are those half steps as we progress to different scales is always remember the formula. In all major scales, the half steps are between steps 3 and 4 and 7 and 8 for all major scales. So the name of the scale is number 1 in that process. Okay, so that's kind of a little information for you there. All right, you're going to practice line 2, 3, and 4, and I'm going to do 5, 6, and 7 for you right now because these actually now are going to be adding slurs and ties into the different pieces. Okay. And when you play a slur, you don't need to use tons of bow. Remember, it's not necessary to be just swinging your bow arm across, because if you're not perfectly parallel with the bridge, your bow goes crooked and makes all kinds of little squeaky sounds, and you're wondering, why is my violin doing that, or my instrument, my viola or cello? You want to remember to keep the bow perfectly parallel with the bridge. So here we go with number 5, waterfall. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rest, 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 and lift. You have that comma at the end. If you're going to repeat this, you're going to have to lift your bow. All right, next one, number 6, is long, long ago. There are a couple spots in here where you see the comma, where you will lift and reset your bow. 1, 2, ready, begin. Lift and set. Lift and set. Lift and set. on to number 7. All of these are in the key of D major. As you can see at the beginning of each line, you still have those 2 sharps. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there you have page 21. The last one is a theory assignment, so we will skip that one for now. And we're going to go on to page 22. Now we have 3 beats in a measure. And how do we know that? When you look at the time signature, which is right next to the key signature, as it explains at the top number tells you how many beats are in a measure. Now we have 3 beats in a measure. The bottom number 4 tells you that a quarter note gets 1 count. That's what the 4 stands for, quarter note. So now we have 3 beats in a measure and we're doing a D major scale. So we're going to use a little bit more bow, but not a lot, like this. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, Then you come down on the next line. Okay, so now we move on to number 2, 3 to a bow. Really, it's just a cute title, meaning we're playing 3 notes in a bow. Until there is a dotted half note, then that dotted half note gets 3 counts. 1, 2, 3. And you notice that when I'm changing fingerings, I'm keeping my bow as smooth and as connected as possible. Because these 2 hands have to learn to work independently. And it really shows up a lot in the slurs. And that's a little bit of a challenge. But with a little bit of practice, you'll get it. I know you will. Okay, so the French folk song might be a little bit different than the one you already know. This one's designed to give you just 3 beats in a measure. 1, 2, 3. Now the next one is line 4 and 5. Line 5 is really for more or less the teacher to play with you, to accompany you, so you start hearing a harmony line. Students will play line number 4. And Arco again is reminding you that you play with the bow, and the person on the bottom, or the teacher, will do the pizzicato. That's what P-I-Z-Z stands for. Now, the title is Old Macdonald, and underneath it says duet. Duet, and that means 2 people. When 2 people play together, it can be the same instrument, it can be a combination of different instruments, but if it's 2 people, it's called a duet. When it's 3, it's called a trio, 4 a string quartet, and so on and so forth. So, and most commonly played in string literature is string quartets. But in this book, in the Strictly Strings and Classics, we have generally 2 different lines, a melody and a harmony line, making it really interesting and fun to play with someone else, or to have the class divide up into different sections of melodic and harmonic lines. So here we have Old Macdonald. 1, 2, ready, begin. moving on to page 23. And you notice at the top you have a little chart that tells you now we're in playing notes, open D, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So in other words, the names of those notes, because it's different in finger placements for the cello, that is a D, E, F sharp, G, and A. Now there's a little bracket inside that big blue box, and it says interval. The distance between two notes is called an interval. So if we have like a D and an E, those two notes are right next to each other going up the scale. That's an interval of a second. When you count D, E, F, that's 3 notes. That would be an interval of a third, and so forth as they have designated. Now, dynamics tell us how loud or soft to play a piece. When we talk, we use dynamics in our language to make things more exciting, or we're excited we're going to Disneyland or going out to dinner or a movie. You generally don't say it like this because that would be pretty dull and boring. Your friends would think, well, gee, aren't you excited? Because we do tend to have dynamics in our voice. So when music, we add dynamics for a more creative line to make it more interesting and more fun. When you see the letter F, and these are Italian words that are utilized in music, that is what has been done for centuries, because Italian was the universal language for musicians. Now it's pretty much English, because composers that write today use words like play briskly or play sadly or with energy or with vitality. So we're using more English, whereas several hundred years ago, even going back further than that, Italian was the language for musicians. So the F stands for forte, or it equals loud. How do we play loud on a string instrument? We use a little more bow pressure into the string, but we need to be careful not to crunch. You'll be able to tell that right away because your instrument's right next to your ear. So, oops, you'll just back up a little bit. If you want to play soft, you just use a very soft pressure. It has nothing to do with length of bow. Some people think forte, oh, it means I have to use the whole bow and just really dig in. No, it doesn't have anything to do with length of bow. The note value has to do with the length. And of course, if we want to play soft, you would, again, just not press into the string as hard. Okay. All right, there is a section here for left-hand pizzicato. We're going to skip those first 4 lines that focus on left-hand pizzicato. We will come and revisit that another time. Right now, I want to keep working on slurs and ties, which is what number 5 and 6 really concentrate on page 23. So let's go to London Bridge, where we continue with slurs and ties. And we're still in the key of D major. You notice the 2 sharps. 1, 2, ready, begin. You probably noticed the difference between the forte and the piano. And again, I really didn't change the amount of bow that I was using in order to produce those 2 dynamics. Now the next one, a favorite most of us know, lightly row, number 6. 1, 2, ready, begin. Rest and lift forte. And there you have page 23. Let's move on now to page 24. And now what we're working on are eighth notes. And if you look at the box at the top of the page, there are 4 quarter notes, 2 half notes, and then they divide up how those eighth notes would fit into the beat value. You have a set of 2 eighth notes that equal a quarter note. You have 2 quarter notes that equal a half note that would equal 4 eighth notes. It's math. There's a lot of math in music. You're constantly counting in your head while you're trying to figure out, okay, what finger to put down, what the name of the note is, and then what bowing I'm using. So there's a lot of multitasking going on, but it's great brain development, as we've stated before. You will work on lines number 1, 2, and 3. This entire page is still in the key of D major. So I'm going to start with number 4. You'll probably recognize this as well. 1, 2, 3, 4. Moving on to the next one, we have the German folk song. You look at the second line, you kind of have something interesting. You have 3 measures that you play, and then you come upon a measure that has a number 1 and a line over it, and repeat sign. So what that tells you to do, you're going to play that line through that measure with the number 1. Then you're going to go back to the beginning of that second line. As you play that second line the second time, you're going to skip number 1 because you've already played number 1. You're going to go to the measure that has the number 2 on it. That is telling you there's a first ending and a second ending. And why do they do that? That's to save paper. The printing costs for these books, and many, many years ago in Baroque times and Middle Ages, there wasn't that much paper available. So a lot of minuets and gavottes and bourrées in the Baroque period had a lot of repeats in them to save paper. Now we save paper to try and save trees and just try and be more ecologically friendly to the environment. So they put it also in the book this way to make sense to finish up this page without it carrying on. It's also for printing costs. So we're going to play this one. I will play the first ending and then the second ending. If you need to go slower on any of these exercises at home, please feel free to do so. I'm just trying to kind of go at a tempo that would be typically done in a classroom. Okay, however, when you practice on your own, you are certainly happy to go ahead and practice something a little slower. I wouldn't speed through it too fast because these are marked allegro, moderato, and there are reasons that that kind of a tempo is in there. Okay, last one is called Two at a Time, and again it tells us it's a duet. So number 6 is the line that you're going to practice, and number 7 would be for a teacher or a friend, someone you want to play together with, make music together with. That would be great. I'm going to play this one time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rest and lift. And there you go. One thing you want to remember when you lift your bow, and I always say the words inside, lift and set. And there's a reason. If you come from the air, you lift your bow, and you start playing the next note before you have set the bow, that little crunch or that little boing drum roll is what you're going to hear. So you lift, set. get a perfect sound every time. Believe me, it makes more sense. Do not come from the air, come from the string for the best sound. All right, so moving on to page 25, we have a Polly Wolly Doodle, which is an American folk song. American folk songs, like folk songs for any culture or any country, typically do not have a composer listed. And the reason why is these pieces are played at dances, at dinners, at family gatherings, community gatherings, and they're celebrated together as a family and as a group. And over the years, we just tend to kind of forget who originally came up with this, because it becomes such a part of the culture that we lose who originally came up with it. And also it sometimes has several variations and modifications as it evolves. There again, we can't just give it to one composer, because maybe 3 or 4 other people have contributed to its evolution too. So anyway, Polly Wolly Doodle is an American folk song. And if you notice, in the A part is what I'm going to ask you to play. In the beginning, there are double notes for some of the instruments. You're playing an open A and an open E string. For the viola and the cello, please just choose one of those 2 notes, okay? And violins, the double notes are optional, or play them together. When you play double notes, you lean the bow towards both strings. Equal pressure on both strings, and again, don't press too hard, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. Rest, rest. Lift and set. Don't lift. Now lift. Rest. Okay, so remember, only when the comma is in the music, then you lift and set. Otherwise, you're going to keep the bow on the string and then just go in the next direction, opposite of what you just finished. Okay, on Rainy Day Song, if you take a look at this one, again, we're still in the key of D major, and we have that A and B part. Just learn the A part, the first line. There again, they're giving you both that first ending. You play to the end of the first ending, there's a comma, you're going to lift your bow and set and repeat that line. But the second time, you'll skip those 2 measures that have a 1 above them. And then you go right on to the second line. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Set and repeat. Second ending coming up. Now going on. And then it concludes our pages through page 25 for your individual practice. So I hope this is helpful, and happy practice.